Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
If you've been hurt in a road accident that wasn't your fault, you should really talk to G4 Claims first. Unlike road accident solicitors, we don't charge you for our services, which could see you better off. To keep 100% of your compensation, have a chat with Nicole and the team. You'll be glad you did. Search online for G4 Claims.
Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
Hi and welcome to this week's episode of the DW podcast. I am joined by another Motherwell girl, Kirsten McStay. How you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me.
No
I'm
worries.
so nervous.
It's funny because we were talking before we started recording, and Kirsten, you are a journalist, you're now a successful author, you've got your own podcast, so I do not know why you would be nervous about doing anything like this.
It's just weird, like, because I'm on the opposite end of it. I'm being asked the questions this time, so it's... The podcast that I do is not kind of... I don't know, it's weird. We're just two people chatting. It's not really kind of questions and stuff, so I'm looking forward to speaking with you today.
I think that what's quite interesting for me is we've known each other for a long time, you know, probably stayed streets apart when we were kids or whatever, but there'll be people listening to this and watching this thinking, who is Kirsten? So I think probably the best thing to do is give them a wee bit of background about yourself. So you're a journalist.
Yes, I am a showbiz writer for the Daily Record. I've been doing that for over a year now, that one, but I've worked in the same company for about five and a half years. And I started, it's always what I've done. I went to uni to do journalism and I graduated in 2016 and I went straight into working with my local paper at the time when I stayed in Hamilton. So yeah, I've just kind of, it's something I always wanted to do, and it's weird for me because everybody's like, what did you always want to do when you were younger? Like saying, I always used to say, I want to read and write the news. So for me to do that now, it's quite mad, but I love it, I do love it.
How does that come about? Because there's obviously loads of people out there that want to be a journalist. It sounds like a dead attractive career. And showbiz journalism is probably the one that everybody wants to do.
I don't know, like, even when I was a wee girl, like, I was never good at maths or anything like that. Like, literally, I don't even have an int 2 in maths. Like, I was so bad at it. And I was always really good at writing. And I remember at parents' night, like, the teacher said to my mum, like, she's an amazing writer. Like, she wrote this story, I think it was about aliens or something, and she's like, I just can't believe she wrote that. I was in, like, primary 3 or something. So everyone always kind of knew, like, I would be into writing or whatever, and like, even pretending I was writing a book and stuff like that. And my papa, he wrote 2 books, like, when he was in his 70s and stuff.
Way.
So yeah, he wrote a book actually based in Motherwell down the Birdies.
Shut up. No
I'll
way.
give you it one time. We need it. It's okay.
Can you buy it? Is it still available?
I don't know. I think he handed it into the Motherwell Heritage Centre like years
Oh my
ago.
God,
but
I love stories like
me
that.
and Johnny are like main characters in it, so I'll let you show you that. But I always kind of looked up to that, and I thought that's dead cool. Like, he wrote a book. He wrote 2 books. He wrote an autobiography first, and then it's called Pixie Well.
Right.
So I always kind of had this in my mind, like, oh,
Is that because that area, there's supposedly pixies and all that down
like
there?
I've not read it in a long time, but it's all kind of based on, like, you know how it's like the Green Lady and all that down there kind of thing. So it's all based on that. So being a wee girl seeing that, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, he self-published as well, and I just thought that's something I'd love to do. So writing and books and stuff like that's always been something I've been interested in. So I was quite happy when actually it's something that I do for a job now. So yeah.
See, when you're writing a book, for example, and you work for the Daily Record, is there any, like, conflict of interest there? Do you need to say to them, like, I'm writing a book, or are they quite encouraging and say, right, on you go?
I've not really had the conversation with them, to be fair, because I'd started writing the book in 2019, so a long time. So I never really, I didn't really want to put them together. Like, I didn't want to be like, oh, they'll promote that for me or they'll do it for me. Do you know what I mean? I just wanted to do it in my own kind of accord and just leave it at that, because I think sometimes it can, particularly for what I've been writing about as well, like, it would conflict. So I kind of try to keep them separate because that's my job at the end of the day, and this is just something that's been a kind of sideline for me. So not necessarily, but if I ever did, then it would be okay. I think it'd be fine. It's not like, I don't think it would be like.
What is your best showbiz piece that you've covered?
Oh God, when I covered your podcast the last time.
Good answer. There we are.
I know you're putting me in the spot.
Not that one, cut that clip. Put
I
it
know,
on
it was
now.
Amanda Knox. Your story, I'm kidding on. I don't know, that's what I mean. I was saying earlier on, I only started doing this job in February 2020. So I was literally in the office sitting at my desk for like 3 weeks, and then they were like, right, coronavirus has happened. So I was like, oh my God. I was thinking this, so they said, you'll be sitting home for 3 weeks and then it'll all be normal or whatever, and that was like last February, and I'm still working from home. So I've not kind of had the showbiz job that I thought I would get, but I'm sure it'll come at the same time. But it's not been as, like, covering Transmit and all that was like everything that I thought I'd be doing and stuff, but just with what happened last year and stuff, it never, but it's fine. So I don't know, off the top of my head I can't really think of a great showbiz story, but
it's going to come. With everyone opening back up again, I'm sure you'll be busy.
I'm so excited for that. Like, that's what I've waited for all this time. Like, being a showbiz writer was my absolute dream job, and you know, when you don't get to do what you think you're going to do, it's quite disheartening, and you think, oh God, is it ever going to happen? But now that the world is opening back up and we're going to more things, then
it's really funny that, because I think that everybody seems in this same bubble that you think, you know, you're not doing anything, you're stuck in the house and you're lonely and you're working from home and you've nobody to talk to, and then I think you need to remind yourself that everybody's kind of doing the same. You know, there's so many people out there that's the same, and it's not just you.
I know, that's it. And I think in the book that The Sweats of My Life, I'll give it a plug, there's a bit in it where I talk about coronavirus, but I didn't want to go into it too much because everybody's been through it. It's not like it's one of these things where maybe just some people have experienced it. Every single person in the world has been through it. So a few people had said to me like, oh, did you not talk a bit more about that? And I was like, well, everybody knew it happened. Everybody knew. We were all in the house. We were all Zoom quizzing and all that kind of thing. So I didn't want to kind of touch on that too much because it's all we've heard for the past year and a half, do you know what I mean? So
let's give that book a plug. The Swipes of Your Life, Kirsten McStay. Tell us about it, because I am fascinated by this. There are so many people out there that have been on online dating, that have been on Tinder, Grindr, Bumble, you name it. But I don't think there's been anybody that's documented it in this way. And I was very lucky to get a read at it before we done this podcast. And this is maybe unfair for me to say, but it's probably a more female audience that you'd go for.
Yeah, definitely. Don't get me wrong, there's guys that have read it, but it's just more about an experience of a girl in her 20s going through all these dating apps that you just named, and obviously it not being a success, or else we wouldn't have the book. But yes, I have been on every dating app possible, and I have the stories to tell with it. So I started writing the book in, I think it was December 2019. So I think maybe 2017 I became newly single after a 6-year relationship ended. So I was still really young, to be fair, at the time, but you know that way, like, you think you're going to marry somebody and you think you're going to be with this person forever, and then it comes down like a ton of bricks and you're like, oh my God, what happens now? So obviously been off the dating scene for so long, and then it's all changed, everything's done on a phone now, so I'm like, oh my God, what the hell?
It's all brand new to you.
It was so alien to me, like, nobody met people in bars, nobody, like, as you all heard from the films and stuff, it never happened. So everybody was like, oh man, you're going to meet somebody on an app. So there it was, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, I had them all, and literally every time I met one of my pals, they were like, how's the dating going? And I was like, oh, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and they're like, oh my God, and or maybe I'd say like, oh, it's going really well, and the next time I seen them I'd be like,
it's
no, he's a definite no, he is not Mr. Right. So we kind of had this ongoing joke that I just met all the bad people on there, and I was on my cousin's hen do in Magaluf, and we were round about the pool, and I was telling the girls the stories and what happened, and they were like, you need to write a book. And I thought, do you know, probably could write a book, everything that's happened to me. And that was it. And I thought, well, I'd always wanted to write a book, as I'd said, but with everything that had happened, I thought, this is great content, and it's all real life. It's not like I had to like fabricate anything or make stuff up, so it was perfect. So that was me, that was the August, and then in December I started writing it.
And I was maybe unfair there by saying it's a mainly female audience, but the reason I said that is because I was reading it, and just chuckling away all the way through it, and it is so relatable, you know, and I would urge any male, regardless of what age you are, to go and read this, because it's hilarious. But I think that what I really took away from it, Kirsten, is that is not easy to do. You know, you're really, really opening yourself up there. You're putting out your whole personal life on paper for anybody in the world to read. And we started talking before we recorded here, and you told us that the first person you let read it was your mum. And if I had wrote that book, there's no way I'd be letting my mum read it.
Do you know, everybody says this to me, but I don't think everyone understands like the relationship you and mum have. Like, obviously, my mum's one of your neighbours, as you know, and it's dead funny because, like, growing up, I talk about this in the book as well. Like, my mum was a single mum, and it was only me, her, and my brother for so long, and we were just all so close. And there wasn't really anything that I wouldn't tell her. Like, obviously, I wouldn't go into like detail about things like that, but I would always go to her for advice or like, do you know what, wasn't ever something that I'd be like, you know, some people are like scared to go to their mum or whatever, but no, not with me. So when I was writing the book and she was like, always dead excited and what's happening now, you nearly finished it yet and whatever, but I think if I'd said to her I would rather you didn't read it, if people come up to her in the street or whatever and were like, oh, I read Kirsten's book, and she'd be like, well, I've not read it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's no fair almost.
It's not really fair, and at the same time, she knew to an extent some of the stuff that happened in it, because I'd always told her, like, she'd be like, oh, so how's the date go? And I was like, oh my god, it was a disaster and whatever. And she it was almost as if she was always trying to marry me off anyway. So she was like, oh, then she'd like say to me, oh, what was his name? And I'd say, like, for example, Craig Smith, and she'd be like, oh, Kirsten Smith. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was just always so interested in my life. So
but that's because you're a little girl, isn't it? You know,
we are so close. Like, me and her, we go on holiday together every year, just the two of us and stuff. So we are really, really close. So when it was time for the book to come out, the only person I really cared about's opinion was her, because I knew she would tell me, like, you can't put that in there, or are you sure? Like, at first she said to me, you know, you're really putting yourself out there, like, you are literally telling everyone your whole personal life. And I said, well, the motto I kind of go by is like, it's only embarrassing if you're embarrassed. Like, I'm not at all, because it's normal. Like, it's a normal thing. Like, we've all probably done something in that book, but maybe just not spoke about it. So when it was time to kind of bring it out, before I like published it for anyone to buy, I let her read it first. And she would phone me and she'd be like, oh my god, I'm chuckling away at this chapter, or oh my god, you didn't tell me you'd done that, or something like that. And when she read it and said it was brilliant, I was like, right, okay, I'm ready to tell everyone else about it, because if my mum is like, she would be my like worst critic kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So if she thinks it's good, then
was there any
good.
bits that she told you to take out?
No, not take out, but she was just like,
edit or twist. Or...
oh, I don't know if you should put that in there. Like, obviously you'll know there's a bit in there. Spoiler alert, that my mum came into my flat to wake me up one time because I nearly missed the wedding and I wasn't alone, let's just say. And the funny thing is with that story, like, anyone else would just be embarrassed and like not speak to their mum for a week, but I had to go to a full day wedding with her. So
I loved the bit of that story where, you know, you were mortified and your mum went out the room and the guy was like, oh no, is she going to be raging? But your mum had left you a can of iron brew because she knew that you were hungover.
That's the thing, and that's the thing, like, she's no daft, do you know what I mean? And she knows that I'm not like stupid or anything like that. Well, that day I was stupid, but to the extent, like, she knows that's what girls do. She's not, you know, and some people would maybe be embarrassed, but I think, as I said, the relationship me and her have, like, we at the end of the night when I went to her house after that, she was like, you didn't stop out, let's go to the wedding kind of thing, do you know what I mean? So it's fine.
Yeah.
As long as she was happy with it, then that was it. The wedding, as I said, a few bits, she was like, I can't believe you're saying that, and I'm like, well, it happened. So
totally.
They put it in there, so no, she's totally cool with it, and she's very proud of me. Like, she's like my momager, like Kris Jenner on Facebook, like
amazing.
totally sharing it, like everything. It was so funny. She posted like a picture of me like holding the book or whatever, and oh, my mum's like Facebook famous with her pals, like hundreds of comments, and she was I was just like, oh, congratulations, and she's like, thanks.
As if it's her.
So I was like, you're like my Kris Jenner fan. But
do you not feel like Facebook, before getting off on a tangent, it just became like for mums? Like, it started
loves it.
Aye, my mum's obsessed with it, selling things on it. And
not even that, my mum's got a dog, and that, like, she was wishing her happy birthday on it, and like it's the same birthday as my brother, and everybody was like, happy birthday, Brie, like right under the dog's Facebook.
Where's your brother?
I know, it's dead funny, but no, she's probably my biggest fan, I would say.
That's
and
amazing.
She's sharing it and telling all her pals about it, and we were actually in the Electric Bar she was in there with her pals for lunch the other day, and I went to pick them up, and I went in and she's like, bring your book down, I'm telling Gina about it. So I'm bringing the book down, and the woman at the table next to her was like, oh, Kirsten, let me see it to show my pals. So it was just, it's so nice, and like people of that generation as well are reading it and laughing and stuff.
That's
like
amazing.
all my pals' mums have read it as well, and I'm like, oh.
And do you feel embarrassed at all about that?
No, everybody knows what I'm like I'm quite, you'll know yourself, like, I kind of make the best of a bad situation, and you just got to own it. Like,
Absolutely.
see if it's embarrassing. But as I said, it's only embarrassing if you're embarrassed about it. So
And that's it.
you could sit and let it eat you away and be like, oh God, I wish I never done that. Like growing up, so me and Johnny, my brother, he was always a worrier. Like he was always like, if he'd done something, he'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe it, and think about it. But I'd be like, bugger it, it's happened, you can't change it. So I think that's just the way I've always been.
You mentioned your brother Johnny, and I know Johnny well, and he's a great guy.
Everybody knows Johnny well, Motherwell.
Brilliant singer, great dancer. He says as well, you know, your mum was she brought you up on your own almost. Johnny, as a protective big brother, has he read it?
No. So this is the thing. So there's obviously 3 very important men in my life. So my brother, my stepdad, and Nicky, who's my boyfriend. Spoiler alert. We get a happy ending at the end of the book. But I said to them, I would like if you didn't read it, because obviously there is like sex chat in it and about like stuff like that. Like, not in a great detail, as you'll know. It's not graphic. It's not like 50 Shades of Grey and talking like that. There's nothing like that. But I just would rather they didn't. Like, if they really wanted to and they said, oh, but they understand, like, it is a female kind of audience, but I let Nicky read the last chapter, his chapter. That was it, that's all I got. I was like pure hovering over him, making sure he didn't like flip through any more pages. But my stepdad as well, he's amazing, and I gave them all a wee dedication at the end, so they were allowed to read that, and that was it, nothing else.
How was Nicky with the end of it? Because from me reading the whole book all the way through and seeing like the pain, the trauma, the laughs that you had, but also some quite deep, you know, painful experiences in there. How was he with that? Because I actually felt, this is really nice. You know, it was heartwarming.
I know, the ice queen is melted. That was like me at the end. But so I actually didn't let him read it until it was like in book form. Like maybe I would have been like, oh, maybe read that and see what you think. But I thought it was nice that I just kind of let him. If anybody's read it, you'll know I have to do like a wee soppy thing at the end. Just like when we met, it was totally unexpected. Like as I said, it was like the kind of end of whatever number of lockdown it was, and we kind of met. But I wasn't expecting it, so it came as a total shock to me. But he's been so supportive, and it's dead nice. Like he was sharing it on Facebook and all that when it came out, and I thought not everybody would do that. And he's just like, he's saying, "Oh, I'm so proud of you," and whatever. Like he knew this was a dream of mine, so now that I've done it, like he's so proud, and it's nice. And when he read it, he was like, "Well, that was dead." I think he said like lame or something like that. That was dead lame, but thanks. But no, it was. He said that was nice, and he did appreciate it, but. I was worried like what his pals would say about it, and like, oh, your birds wrote a book about, like, because anyone that would seen it would think it's like a 50 Shades of Grey book when it's totally not. But everybody's been so nice about it, and as I said, it has been our dream. So for me to actually do it, I'm like, well, I've achieved something out it. So
there's some really interesting bits in it that when I was reading it, I was thinking, are these names real? Have you changed the names? And I know some of your pals and their names weren't changed, but the men involved names were changed.
I decided that this is not a kiss and tell book. I didn't want to like out anyone for whatever. I didn't want to like create a witch hunt or whatever or against anyone. So all the men in the book that were dates, his names have been changed. Just for the simple reason that I don't want them to sue me because I have no money, and also that I just couldn't be bothered with the aggro of it. So I just changed the name because it's more about how I felt when all these things were happening to me, and how, you know, going through that, and then ups and downs and ups and downs. It wasn't about that person in particular, it was more about how I felt going through it all. So I thought the best thing would be to change the names, keep all my pals' names so everybody's known. So like my pals like, oh, remember that bit? And oh yeah, like, do you know what I mean? So it's nice, but I just thought it would be for the best not to do that.
Kirsten, there's some really funny bits in it as well. Is there a bit that, I don't want you to give too much away through the book because I want people to go out and buy this, but is there one story that you've put in it that you think that makes me cringe more than anything else, or one that makes me laugh more than anything else? One that jumps to mind for me is the guy that was a stand-up comedian.
Oh God, that was horrible. Without like giving away the story, like I invited a stranger over to my house, and he totally like personality catfished me, and I just didn't know what to do, so I ended up just kissing him just to kill the silence. And see when he left though, do you know that when you sit and you just think, what did I do that for? And I still sometimes like shudder when I think about that time, and that was really bad. The other kind of time was the guy with the dog. For anybody that's not read the book, this guy, it was like just before lockdown, and he stayed in Edinburgh, so we were going to go out on a date, and then everything got shut, and he was like, I'll just come over, but I need to bring my dog. And I was like, right, okay. And he brought like the dog's bed with him, and it was still in my house till about 2 months ago. Like,
where's that dog been sleeping for the past 2 years?
I was like, I need to get rid of this. I really need to get rid of this. But just things like wee silly things. It's not even like necessarily a date or something. It's maybe like, or like the guy that wore the awful boots and on the just there's loads of things that sometimes I think, what were you thinking? And a lot of the time I've had a lot of messages from people saying, as you'll know, like I went back for a second time a lot of the time when I shouldn't have, and they're like, I was like pure screaming at the book when I was reading it, saying, what are you doing going back again after like the guy after Chiquitos, like sending me terrible videos after the date, and I've seen him after that, so I'm like, things like that.
But this is the thing, other people probably enjoy this book so much because they can relate to it. And I think that's something that's really pertinent about this, is once you've put that all down on paper, it must be really empowering. You know, it says to me that you're in a very, very happy place and you're a strong individual now because you've got the guts to do that. You know, you're putting yourself all out there, as we've touched on earlier. Like, you must put it down and think, do you know what, I'm dead proud of myself. And also, I can imagine that you're getting so many people getting in touch with you and saying, oh my God, you know, you've made me laugh about experiences that I've had, or you've made me feel confident about talking about experiences I've had. Definitely,
and I think, like, sometimes I'd write something down and I'd be like, as I said, like, should I really be putting this in there? It did happen, so yeah, bugger it. But the messages that I've had on the back of it, like, literally I had a message yesterday from someone saying, you know, I'm married now, but a few things had kind of been niggling at me for that I'd done in the past, and after reading your book it's given me a bit of peace of mind that actually I'm normal, things like this happen all the time. It's not just me and stuff like that, and people have messaged me saying, you know, I was feeling the same and going through this vicious cycle of, you know, seeing somebody having like an extreme dumping or like being ghosted or anything like that, and then doing it all again and starting like chatting to somebody new and then feeling horrible. And I've had messages people saying like they felt the same, and they're glad that I've put this out there because they know
they're not alone.
They're not alone, and things crazy people do come to your house and end up having 4 girlfriends and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And I've heard some hilarious stories from people off the back of it as well. They've messaged me and be like, oh my God, this happened to me, and X, Y and Z happened as well. So no, the feedback I've had has been absolutely amazing, and some of the messages, just even one message I got, I was like, this whole book was worth it just for that one, do you know? So I'm happy I
Is
done
that
it.
personal? Can you go into that, or is it?
It was just like, you know, I think she had split up with her man, and, you know, she thought this was it, this was who she was going to marry. I think maybe they had a child together, and like she was like, you know, that was me, I was in a rut and I thought I'm never going to meet anyone. And I read your book, and she said she cried at the end. A few people have said that, and that makes me want to cry, because I just think
I wasn't going to say that, because I didn't quite cry, but I did feel quite soppy at the end of it.
Well, that's the thing, like, even there's bits in the book where I talk about struggling with depression. Like, I was going to talk to you about this anyway, but I've been so lucky throughout my whole life that I had never dealt with depression or anything like that before until lockdown. So I was so used to being around people all the time, getting out. As you know, I don't think I've ever seen you out with the pub, if I'm honest, in real life, but I was always with people.
I don't know if that says more about me or you.
But I'd never been alone. I'd always had somebody's house to go to, do you know what I mean? So when it was like all of a sudden everything had been ripped away from you, I really, really, really struggled.
Because you're a sociable person, you know, and
that's it. Like, my job's sociable. Like, that's why I like being single as well. Like, it's awful doing all that. So obviously doing all the Tinder stuff in lockdown, like, you've got absolutely hee-haw to talk about. For one, you can't go out and see anyone. So I just felt like I was drinking all the time during lockdown. Like, I think obviously most people were Zoom quizzing, but it just wasn't cutting it for me. Like, I'm just like, I'm quite a cuddly person as well. Like, if I see my pals, I'm like, oh, my mum or whatever, and I just totally, like, there was some days I just was changing out of pyjamas into pyjamas, and I really struggled. And it was a shock for me, because I was like, shit, I rely on other people for happiness. So I really threw myself into that book during that time, because I had nothing else to do. So in it, when I do talk about times like that, or like maybe when I had been feeling low, I was like going back through all these emotions at the time. So it was hard writing it as well, but it also made me realise that I had to have something to focus on, and then focus on myself and realise that I need myself to be happy. So it was the whole lockdown thing that made me think, you need to work on yourself first before you not even meet anyone. That wasn't the end goal, but I realised that I had to better myself to better my life as a whole. So it saved me, that book. It's crazy to admit it, but it saved me during a really, really tough time, tough few months.
What would you have done without it?
Probably drank and ate and drank and ate. You know, I was in like I think a lot of people were, like, I speak to those people all the time that, like, I put on 2 stone during lockdown or whatever. Like, it's so easy to do, but I think I just had to give myself a shake and be like, wake up, you're better than this, you've got so much to live for, this isn't going to be forever. But I think at the time what I really struggled with was there wasn't an end date, there wasn't like, this is only going to be for like until September the 28th. See if it in March they had said September the 28th, that'll be your absolute end. I think I would have coped better.
I was the same. You want an end date, don't you? Something to work towards.
There's not even a maybe or anything like that, so it was hard. But like, and during lockdown I FaceTime my mum every single day, like twice a day, and we still do it now, like just because it's like habit all the time. And I don't know, it made me really appreciate everything that I've got now. So see, every time somebody's like, do you want to do something? I'm like, I will do
sign
it.
Me up.
I will go to the opening an envelope. I will do anything, because I'm literally like, it made me realise how important life is during that time.
Kirsten, you've been very honest about that. You say, you know, it was a really hard time, but I think there's so many success stories that have come out of lockdown, and this book is one. You know, it was a difficult time for you, but you've now got something to look back on and be really proud of as well. I
know, definitely, and I think even like to say like I wrote a book, that's just so cool.
That's
I just
amazing.
can't believe it, and it's so funny. Like, it's really bizarre. I was in that abandoned ship in Glasgow with my pal Hayley. It's actually so good, but me and her, we couldn't get a table, so we were sitting, and this girl came up to me and she's like, "Are you Kirsten?" I was like, like, what have I done? And she was like, oh, I've just finished reading your book. And she was sitting with her boyfriend. She's like, me and him met on Bumble, and I was just telling her that I finished your book. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just really weird. And when I was at Transmit as well, I actually met you too. But aside from that, another person who came up to me and said, and I was with Hayley again, she's like, I think you're paying these people to come up to you and say this, but it's really mad. And like, people say, oh, I loved it, and I've gave it to my pal, and I've passed, like, another girl messaged me saying she's a nurse and all the nurses in the ward are reading it. And
you better tell them to stop passing it around and start buying it.
I know, well, that's the thing. But it's just really, it's crazy to think that I've done that, you know, it's bizarre, but I'm so happy I did. It's always been like a bucket list thing for me, so it's here, like, it's actually, I can hold it, so it's really chunky, so you probably knock something out with it, but I just can't believe that that was me.
But listen, you've not just done it. Let's talk about how successful it's been, because you put this in paper, I'd imagine you had no expectations, you just thought, I'm just delighted to do that, and you've sold thousands of copies.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It's crazy, like, it's particularly been a self-published author, so it's all done through Amazon. My pal Paula Johnson helped me a lot with it, because she's already brought out a book, so I was just a bit like airy-fairy, like, help me, what do I do? But obviously so much work goes into it. Like, see, literally the week before it was getting uploaded for the pre-order, like, I'd sold hundreds on pre-order for the ebook, and I was feeling so pressured. I'm like, oh my God. And one night I actually sat up till like 5 in the morning to make sure it was like, you know, ready to go, and I couldn't believe that people were like pre-ordering my book. I'm like, what the hell? And when it hit midnight the day it was coming out, like, people were like sending me pictures of them reading it on their Kindles and stuff, and I just thought, what? You're all reading this by me, kind of thing. And it's only been out, I think I brought it out the 27th of August, so like a month, and as I said, I've sold like over 1,000 copies, which is crazy. And I just can't believe it. Honestly, it blows my mind. I said to my mum, see if I made like 500 quid for this, I'd be delighted for that. Like, it's something that I've never had anyway, but it's just surpassed my expectations absolutely.
I think the Amazon thing's interesting, because I'm always moaning about Amazon. Do not use it, hate it. But I've spoken to so many independent authors that say it's the best way to do it. You know, in terms of actually publishing stuff, it's so much easier for the person that's writing.
It definitely is. There's like a whole community on there, like if you need questions answered or whatever on there. But that's the thing, as I said to you earlier on, like years ago, like when my papa published his book, God, that was like, I don't know, 2001 or something, I don't know, it was ages ago, but he like bought like 700 copies of his own book, and it cost him money. But with this, you don't need to do that. You just, it's like printed on demand, so every time somebody buys one, orders one, they print one, kind of thing. So it's really good for anybody that does. Like, obviously the dream is to be in Waterstones or whatever, but
Totally.
do you know what, like if I've experienced what I have so far doing it on my own, like,
And I hate to say this because I'm a big fan of bookshops, which sounds really sad. In fact, it is sad, right?
No,
Doesn't
it's
it sound
not.
sad? But no as many people go to them anymore. That's how it's done.
I know.
So you shouldn't be thinking, oh, I'm not on that shelf in the fort or whatever.
I know, but everybody does love a good mooch round a bookshop, don't they? Like, I personally do as well, but it's just, I think it's one of those things that's like, if you've got your book, you've made it. But for me, it's not really, because like I've got an Instagram page for this book alone, and I've got over 1,000 people on there, and it's mad. So what I do on there as well, I post like pictures of actual times throughout the book and stuff. Like, there's pictures of me at the wedding, like spewing on the bus. With,
Oh,
like,
shut up, I'll need to check that out. I've not seen it.
I have posted all the, like, so throughout this whole time of this book, I think this kind of started 2017 up until now, so there's hundreds of pictures of me in
Oh,
daft
that's amazing.
situations. So there's kind of like a wee community on there, and people always like chat and stuff, so it's good that way. But obviously everybody wants the bookshop thing, but for the success I've had so far, only been a month in,
That's amazing.
that's enough for me. Like, it
Totally.
really is. And as I said, the messages that I get from people,
Have you had reviews on Amazon?
I've got about 150 reviews on
All
Amazon.
good?
All good. There is a few wee ones that, you know, people are just nitpick everything, but that's what I said, like, you're always going to get somebody that doesn't like something.
Totally.
You know what I mean? You can't please everybody, and that's fine. Like, I don't like every book I read. I won't like the same book that you like. Do you know,
Sure.
everybody's different, and I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone has an opinion. And
Do you read the reviews? Because that's...
my
oh
mum
my
reads them.
goodness.
She's like, I
Aye.
seen you got another 5-star review today. I'm like, all right, Chris Jenner. But no, I try
She
not
is your
to. Though.
agent.
She is.
Aye.
She would love it. I try not to, because I think you can become a wee bit obsessed with it.
Aye. And you can build yourself up and let yourself down, can't you? It's
I know, like, Mum's like, have you checked, like, not how much you can check how many books you've sold. So you check the day, have you checked the day? I'm like, no, just, I'll check it when I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like, curious about it. But I think it could be addictive to be like, and then, as you said, if you're not getting what you want, you'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, do you know what I mean?
How have you went about promoting it, Kirsten? Because you've obviously got your amazing house Instagram. You've got your book Instagram and your own stuff, but is there any other ways that you've pushed this at all?
Mostly, to be honest with you, the most part of it's been on my home Instagram, because see, during lockdown, like, I started that page during lockdown because I had hee-haw else to do, and again, that page saved me as well, because I
Right, where
talked
can
to
folk check out your page? For that don't know your home Instagram
Oh,
page?
on Instagram, I'm Gaff at the Grange. So I just moved into my house as well. That was another thing. So during lockdown, the January I got my keys and we went into lockdown in like March or whatever. So I had this house that needed everything done to it. I ended up like tiling my own bathroom during lockdown. Like, I was literally doing anything to save my sanity during that time. So I started this home Instagram page to, like,
You were putting people to shame, because I was getting it in the ear saying, look at Kirsten tiling her own kitchen.
I know.
And I'm going, I can't do it. There's no
That was
chance.
it. Like, literally, I was going to be in queue and not have the clue, but I was like, I need something to do, because I cannot physically sit and do nothing anymore. And I think as well, sometimes I'll admit I struggled with the book because I was sitting at a computer. I worked throughout the whole of the pandemic. Like, there was no furlough for me, there was no time off or nothing. Like, I worked in my living room to start, and sometimes sitting at a screen for like 8 hours a day and then coming off to sit at a screen and do my own book was tough on my eyes for the most part, but like, I just was so drained by it. So sometimes I was like, I need something to do, like physical. Baking wasn't for me, like, I was shouting
Banana
that.
bread.
Aye. Mine had a big sink in it, so that wasn't for me. So I turned my hand to DIY, and I'm actually not too bad at it, to be fair. And so I started this page, which now has like 8,000 followers on it, which is crazy. And so they were also, like, I do a lot of like talking videos on Instagram, as you know, and like, I was documenting me writing the book, so a lot of people were like following this journey with me and be like, oh my god, can't wait to read it. This was like back in April last year, so I had this wee community of people checking in with me all the time.
When's
like,
this book
when's
coming?
this coming out? And I'm like, calm down. And then when everything started to open back up again, it kind of took a back seat, because I was just desperate to get out the door, away to the pub. So on Instagram mostly, I've promoted it on there, on Twitter, but I haven't, like, as I said, I never went through my work to get promoted or like chased anything, because I want it to flow naturally
yeah.
kind of thing. And I feel like maybe when it does die down, I'll be like, right guys, help me, punt it for me. But I just want to see how it goes on my own behalf first, without, like, I know a lot of people like pay people to read their books, but if it's a genuine good book, word of mouth.
Absolutely.
Literally, somebody messaged me today and said that they'd sent their cousin the book out in America, and she's like, the American girls think we're wild and all this, and I was like, oh my god, that's hilarious. But that's, I mean, it's just word of mouth. People are saying, oh, I read this book, and people posting pictures of it by the pool and like Dubai and stuff. It's crazy. So,
and Amazon pushes it up the charts as well, doesn't it? Like, because you were saying there's folk in Canada have got it.
Canada, the Netherlands, America, like it's crazy. But I think the first few days I was like number 3 in the love, sex and humour category on Amazon. But again, I think you can become obsessed with that because it's not about that. Like, totally. Checking every day, oh, I've went down 5 or whatever. Like, it's easy to become addicted to that. So I'm just kind of being chill about it. Like, it's fine. People enjoy it. The reviews are speaking for themselves, and the messages I'm getting just tells me that I've done a good job.
You said that you need something to focus on, and I think harking back to the book as well, you know, there was a bit where he says that you were off these dating apps because you were focusing on a 10k that you were going to run. And I just get the impression for everything that you've told me and for that part of the book that it's always good for you to set a goal and a target, and that keeps you driven. When's the next one coming?
Oh god, jeez, there's only been one. Well, I've been asked this a lot as well. So as we know, I'm now in a relationship, so it can't be This Way My Life Part 2 unless I dump him for content. I would never do that. But I think my next one would be fiction. But that's what I mean. I think that'd be harder because this, I didn't have to plan it. It's in like order of what happened. So I think I would really need to think about what I want to do story-wise. But it'll happen, it will happen. I'm definitely going to do it, but for now I'm just enjoying having this one for now. This is my baby for now, so... it's
important to do that though, because think how long you've spent writing this and how much time and effort that you've put in it. You need to actually appreciate what you've done.
I stand back and just admire it very well. I know there's other books that are of a similar genre from people from Scotland, and a few people have said that to me, and I'm like, well, there's room for everyone here. Do you know? You don't only read one book in your life, and everyone's different. Every book's different, and this is my own personal. It's basically like a memoir with terrible men in it. Do you know what I mean? It's not like this actually all happened. There's none of this book that I've juiced up or like. Do you know what I mean? Glamorised kind of thing. That all literally happened. So I would like to write another book, but I can confirm it will not be a dating memoir, sadly. But watch this space, we'll see what happens.
You mentioned something there that I think is really important, that you know that there's other genres, similar books in the same genre, and there's space for everyone. There's space for everyone doing podcasts as well.
There is, yeah.
You do your own podcast?
We do. That's the thing as well. So I met Paula, so I've got a podcast called Two Birds on a Podcast, Birds with a U. And
do you know, I seen something this week and it says that a English court has ruled that the word birds is sexist.
I've seen that as well. We don't care, it's fine. Literally, I met Paula through lockdown as well, and she actually slid into my DMs on Twitter, like, because I was a journalist, and we got chatting, and it turns out, like, we have so much freakishly in common, like, it's crazy. So one day, it was kind of during lockdown, and we'd done a podcast over Zoom, but there was, like, a delay, so every time I would, like, crack a joke, she would laugh, like, 3 minutes later. So I'm like, this isn't going to work, we're going to have to wait until we can do it together. So one day, I hadn't met her before, invited her over to my house, like one of these strange men in my book, and we just were like the same person.
Did she take for ages coming up the stairs?
Well, it wasn't that flat, it was my new one, but I know what you mean with that one. And it was like we were the same person, it was so weird. And we just clicked. Some of the podcasts, it's literally just like two birds having a blather about different girly topics, not so much girly, but controversial things and taboo subjects and stuff like that. So when I met Paula, it was so weird. We have the same tattoo and everything. It's it's so bizarre. I was like, what does that say? Oh, well, I got mine when I was 15, right?
What's
and it's
the tattoo?
Like, after every dark night is a brighter day, right?
You both have that?
We both have
Shut
that.
Up.
So she was
bad enough one person's got that.
I know, that's very, very true. But she was walking out of my house, right? And I was like, what does your tattoo in your back say? And she was like, and I was like, you're kidding me on.
Shut up.
It was so weird. Honestly,
that's mad.
So weird. And there's other things, like, I can't even think off the top of my head, but it was just like we both, like, I used to do spray tans. She used to do that. Like, she studied journalism at college, and there was so many weird things at the same time, and I thought, this is really bizarre, but she's one of my like good friends, and as I said, we've got this podcast and we don't really like, we've not got all this fancy stuff, we just do it on an iPhone. We're just very basic, and we just chat, and I've made a friend through that as well, so and she obviously helped me so much with this book.
Because she is a journalist, a writer on offer as well.
She's got a book called The Lies She Told, which is amazing. It's like a psychological thriller, and I'm like, how did you come up with all this? Because that must have taken a lot of planning. Like, that's what worries me a wee bit. I'm like, I need to plan this book. You need to like plan characters' names, like stuff like that. Whereas I just had to change a few of my men in this one, but I don't think people understand how much goes into a book, and how much, like, that took me like the best part of like 2 years really to fully get everything together, and it does. Like, I think people just sometimes think you churn it out overnight, and you don't. Like, I've read this bloody thing about 4 times, and I'm scarred looking at it now. Like, when I was kind of trying to proofread it, I was like, I've read this bit about 5 times, and it's so much goes into it, and to do what she's done and think all that madness up, it's just, honestly, I take my hat off to her, and anyone that does it, and anyone that does a podcast as well, because as I said, I just turn up, I don't do any of the technical stuff, and she deals with it all, but there's so much that goes into stuff like that, like, it's crazy.
But you've got so much going on.
I know, I'm so busy. That's what I mean, I need to be busy all the time. Everything, I just can't be like sitting at peace, and I think I just like having something to focus on. Like, recently, obviously with all the DIY stuff, like, I finished the bathroom and like, right, what can I do next? Like, what can I plan next? So I like to be busy, and I like to have projects on, but for now, no book projects, because I'm just enjoying myself.
Where can people buy the book if they want to check it out?
Amazon. It's on Amazon. The Swipes of My Life by Kirsten McStay, and I believe it's about £11 and $7.99 on ebook if you want to buy it. Please do, because it's very good. Derek said it was good, so...
If you don't, Kirsten's mum will be raging.
Do it for Pam. If you're not doing it for me, do it for Pam, because she needs this job as the momager.
All the way through that book, you were referring to your mum as Pam, and I found that hilarious. I was like, did she not just tell you to call her mum?
No, I think she's not a regular mum, she's a cool mum, that's the thing. She's just my best pal in the world, and honestly, like, I couldn't have done it without her. I really couldn't have. I could big her up here all day. I could sit and tell you how amazing she is, but everybody that knows her just knows, like, she's just the best person in the world. So I would like to say wee thanks to her, because she's been there through all of this, the good, the bad, and the ugly as well, through all that. And every time something went wrong or whatever, I was always on the phone to her, and every time I'm like, do you think I should say this, or do you think I could say that, or anything, any bit of advice I've ever been, like, she picked me up for one of the dates when I lived there, you know. She's just been there forever.
She's bailed you out.
She definitely, she bailed me and Johnny out a few times, so no, she's amazing, and I can't thank her enough, and now for being my book promoter.
Kirsten, I cannot thank you enough. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much. You were very kind to me.
What did you expect?
No, thank you very much. And you actually did ask me to do this when I was drunk at Transmit, and then I was like the next day, did I speak to Derek Watson? I definitely did. So yeah, we've done it now, but hopefully I'll be back for the next book in 2 years' time.
Absolutely. 2 years then, you put a time frame on it, no pressure.
Right, 2 years then, deal.
Listen, thanks to everyone who has watched and listened to this podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and go back and check some older episodes. Cheers.